Ladies and gents, welcome to Next Level Radio. I am your host, Colby Wortman, and our mission is to tackle the biggest questions in strength and conditioning, business, investing, and everything in between. We bring to you the best people in every sector so that you, the listener, can benefit and learn from the best in the biz. Whether that is S&C or business, you can rest assured you're getting the best knowledge available. Having trained athletes for many, many years, we have tried every treadmill known to man. You name it, we've tried it. With these treadmills, there's always been a disconnect, something missing for our athletic performance, something that just does not correlate to athletic success on the field until we tried our TrueForm runners. TrueForm for over 10 years has been elevating the performance of pro athletes, college athletes, recreational runners, and everyday athletes alike. You can check out TrueForm treadmills at trueformrunner.com, and we thank TrueForm for being an exclusive sponsor of Next Level Radio. All right, it's time we all grow up a little bit. Ditch the pre-workout. It's not 2007 anymore, and it's nothing like Jacked 3D. Ditch the shaker. You're not 4 years old, and you don't need a bottle anymore. And get yourself the best dippable pre-workout on the market. Each pouch is patriotically packed with 300 milligrams of caffeine and vitamins because shaker bottles suck. Send It Sups is the on-the-go solution for athletes, LEOs, firefighters, door kickers, and everybody in between. Head over to senditsups.com to get the best dippable pre-workout on the market, and we thank Send It Sups for being a sponsor of Next Level Radio. Next Level Radio continues to grow because of our listeners and our sponsors. Today we present to you Fat Fish Brewing, the official beer of Next Level Radio. Whether you're looking for a night out with family or smashing the best craft beers in the area, you will find it all at Fat Fish Brewing. Check out Fat Fish on the Large Street in Dickinson, or check them out on their website at fatfishbrewing.com. Life has an amazing way of coming full circle and bringing to you the people that you need in your life at that time. As a young whippersnapper, 4 monsters deep, just excited to tackle the day, I'm headed to my first strength and conditioning conference, and I hear about a company called Team Builder. Multiple coaches with experience with Team Builder and other platforms said the exact same thing. They said that you can get very similar products across different platforms. However, the thing that truly sets aside Team Builder and puts their product above anybody else's is their true and genuine customer service. As a customer for many years, both at the university setting and the private facility, I can tell you, Team Builder's customer service is absolutely second to none. Late night emails, programming issues, emergencies on my end are all resolved very, very quickly. So join the thousands of universities and private facilities that use Team Builder to elevate their businesses by going to teambuilder.com, click Start My Free Trial, and use code NLT at checkout. Our next sponsor, Nutridyne, a medical supplement company aimed at enhancing performance and addressing the underlying issues of disease. You will be hard-pressed to find the quality that you'll find at Nutridyne. Listeners of this podcast get 20% off all supplements. Just go to @coach_Wortman and click the Nutridyne link in our bio. Keep up with us on Instagram @coach_Wortman, on our website, nl-training.com, or keep up with us on the next episode of Next Level Radio. Now sit back, relax, and take in the mind-melting knowledge of this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Next Level Radio. I appreciate all your guys' time, and we have a wonderful one for you guys. We have a doozy today. And as you guys know, real estate has taken over my life in the last couple years. And when you're talking about real estate, you got to surround yourself with real estate people. And in the past, we've had multiple different people. Mr. Chad Glauser, if you ever listen to this, I'm going to get you on here one day, you turd. But just reaching out and trying to, I've said this from the start, Chad, trying to be the dumbest person in the room every single week is something that I take seriously, and it's not just me trying to say that to you or anybody else. The people that watch this on YouTube, the people that listen to it, they can gain that knowledge too. So I appreciate your time a lot, but I'm not going to mess it up. We have Chad Renicker on the podcast today, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself just briefly, and then we can kind of wrap from there, my friend.
Sounds good. Yeah, Chad Renicker. My wife is Maria. We have 3 kids, Sydney, Fiona, and Sky. And we moved to Dickinson in 2012, born and raised in Modesto, California, which is the Central Valley. Got into the construction industry early. I've also been in the real estate industry for a long time as well, and came here and set up shop, and that's what we've been doing for 11 plus years now.
That's awesome, man. And we were talking before we hit record. We both got here in 2012, which was one of the craziest times in the world to get here. Luckily, I wasn't exposed to it the same way you were. I'm student housing. I'm on a full scholarship. The cost of living was very high, right? Going out to Armies to have a beer in college was difficult, but not the rent and all that stuff. And we'll bounce around a little bit, but I first want to start with kind of that compelling story you told me before we got on the podcast. You guys moved here. You uprooted your family. Your wife have never seen it here, and you were in a pickle. You had to figure out something to do, and kind of explain that story, because that was super compelling. I like that.
Yeah, so not to bore with a ton of detail, but born and raised in California, came up in the construction industry, started at 15. Part of my uncle's business, we built stairs. A very successful company, did really well until 2007, 8, when things crashed, and they quit building 2 stories, then they quit building houses at all. Either way, stair guys were hurting. So long story short, had a friend that said, I'll take you up to Dickinson, North Dakota. Never heard of the place before. And there's stuff going on up there.
Yeah.
And so I did a little reading, figured out there was oil, didn't know the first thing about oil. Mm-hmm. But either way, came up here in February of 2012, first time ever. And it was, thankfully, I guess, a pretty mild winter, because if it had been brutal, I may not have come back. I don't know. But clearly there was a lot of things going on. So I came home, and I asked my wife jokingly, because I didn't think in a million years she'd say yes. I said, what do you think about moving to North Dakota? And she said, say when. I was like, wow.
Let's go.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, there were some things we had to get in order to leave town and get up here, which we did. Those things fell into place. And we just really felt like God was opening the door for us, and we needed work. That was the bottom line.
Yep.
We had a 9-month-old at the time, and so we came up here and had a little house that my friend was willing to send a guy packing that wasn't paying rent, and we had to do a lot of remodeling just to make the thing livable. We actually lived in the Oasis Hotel for a month.
Oh,
because
wow.
The house wasn't even rentable, and getting plumbers to show up that didn't know me, we're talking 2012.
Yeah.
Nobody returned a call.
I can hardly get a call today.
Yeah, right.
It's hard. It's not. Imagine 2012.
So anyway, we eventually got it livable, and we moved in, and then I hit nobody knew me. Yeah. I knew the manager of the Oasis Hotel, and like one other person.
Wow.
And so I started walking for 2 weeks. I walked job sites and got nothing.
Wow.
And obviously eventually I started getting some work, and kind of snowballed from there, but that's the short story.
Yeah, man. And was that company Woodland? Was it Woodland Stairs?
So Woodland Stairs in Modesto, California.
Yep.
That's the company that I worked for 16 years or so.
Okay. And you said your uncles?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome, man. This is just my experience with stairs. Obviously, there's experts in the area that can make quick work of it, but I struggle with stairs. Even laying flooring on stairs. I have a real old 1907 stick-built house, and we bought it from my wife's grandfather. But I don't even, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, I don't remember what it was, but they pulled the whole house off and poured a whole new foundation, everything. So everything in this house is brand new,
Gotcha.
Except the stairs. So how it works on the stairs. So you got your riser, and then what's the piece that you step on again?
Tread.
The tread.
Yep.
Well, the tread and the nose are one piece instead of having a detached nose, or installed nose on there. And so I was trying to put LVP on it for a little bit. Well, that wasn't going to work because I'd have to rip off the nose, and it was a whole fiasco. So I ended up just hiring somebody to put some carpet on there because I just wasn't going to do it. But that's a niche thing, and I'm sure in California, with all the houses being built up until that point, you guys were busy.
Oh yeah, and that's what my uncle figured out in the late 80s is when he started the company. He figured out that he had started just as a finish guy, hanging doors, base case. And then he figured out that these builders needed stair guys, and it was a little bit niche. Not everybody knew how to do it. So he basically taught himself and then built the company off that. But
nice.
So yeah, we did a lot of production, just tract housing.
Yep.
But we were super lucky enough to be able to do some really cool stuff in the Bay Area and some
I can only imagine.
High-end stairs and kind of, I don't know, reach the pinnacle kind of stair building.
Uh-huh.
So I got to play in both worlds, production, because I like that kind of blow and go, get in, get out. But I could also jump over to the other side and do the pretty stuff.
The finishing, that kind of stuff. Awesome. Yeah. I'll have you move that mic more in front of your face. Yeah, there you go. And then just stay close to it. So your experience with the construction in California, obviously you tried to get it more, or you tried to do the same thing when you first got here, correct? So you were just trying to go to different job sites and get into the construction game?
Yeah, so also in California, as things progressed and, we were doing well, and I was part of other companies, and so we got into real estate too, on a couple different levels. We actually one of our companies did developing, and then my buddies and I started another company where we flipped a house. Actually, we flipped a couple of houses. We had bought a lot. We were going to build a custom house on a golf course in Central Oregon, up in the Bend area. So I'd done some of that stuff. And then, of course, with the whole '08 deal, it just all went away. So even then, I was doing some real estate but I defaulted back to the construction.
Yeah.
And so when we came up here, yes, that's what I based it on, was just, I didn't need to work.
Yeah.
So whatever people were willing to pay me to do is what I started with.
Put food on the table.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you think that helped you? A lot of people, Chad Glauser, like we're talking about, a lot of people successful in the industry of real estate either started with or have experience in construction of some type. How do you think that helped you or developed you into what you're doing today, or even just owning private real estate properties?
I think on a couple different levels. First of all, even going back to building stairs, one of the jobs I kind of moved into, besides going from just a stair builder to running guys, but I got into the customer service side of things. Mm-hmm. So that was a whole different deal of going back into homes. Now they're occupied. Sometimes they were higher end homes, and these are people with high expectations. Yep. And so I had to learn to deal with people at those levels, and fix what needed fixed, and sometimes it wasn't legit. See, a lot of people working with people, so that translates big time into real estate, whether it's property management, or if you own your own rentals, or just buying and selling, is learning to deal with people. But on the other level of being a contractor and being in construction for so long, it gives me, I believe, especially for my owners that I represent, a lot of insight. I can help them to know what needs done and what doesn't necessarily need to be done. What is, say, a structural issue. I can help that with it instead of just some sales guy. And I'm not saying that around here, really good vendors. Yeah. But just making sure they can feel good that, hey, this needs fixed now. Yeah. Or, you know what? No, it doesn't have to be now. Mm-hmm. If you want to push that one down the road, we can push that one down the road. So just that, at this point, I've been in the construction world for 30 years almost. Mm-hmm. So, and I've saw a lot of different stuff. So I think that's a huge plus for the owners that we represent.
100%. And so you do property management, but also just a straight real estate agent as well, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in I think most states, certainly in the state of North Dakota, to be a property manager, you have to be a licensed real estate agent, which is kind of an interesting thing. I think it's what it defaults, because there's no test, there's no license for a property manager. Yep. But it's in most days vastly different than being a realtor. Yeah. But nonetheless, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And it's worked out really well.
Well, even in like the owners that you're representing, but even just on the real estate selling houses side, I've had experiences, great experiences, and very mediocre experiences with realtors, and I think everybody has. I've had amazing realtors, like my property down in Lead, awesome. I've had places here, awesome. But I had an instance where I had a realtor that didn't have that background, very, very green, very new, didn't have that background, and me searching for somebody that could help guide me a little bit, somebody that could go to bat for me a little bit. I didn't get that. And so we were looking at a couple properties and just trying to get different information about different structural things or the HVAC system or anything like that. There was zero knowledge feedback for me. There's nothing. Yeah. And so that was super hard for me. I didn't end up going with that realtor, obviously, but I think the key is when the biggest thing for you, even before you had your 9-month-old, your asset at that time was your time. You didn't have $1 million. You didn't have, your asset was your time. I have a little sister who's graduating college in like a year. And I told her before she went to college, and she did this, I said, take a year off. It used to not be it used to be frowned upon. You're done with high school, you go to college, because if you take a year, you're never going. When I told her, I said, you think about exactly what you actually want to do. Like really think about it, take some time, work some crappy jobs. But then once you figure out, even if you don't know for a fact, but you think you would like to do that, reach out to people that are successful in that and volunteer your time, because you can't give them money and you can't give them knowledge. So you got to give them time, and I think that's what you've done over the years. And I think it plays huge role because again, I've had really good and really bad experiences. And if you and I were looking at a house, I usually walk the houses with my contractor or my handyman, and that's helped me a lot. But without that, having somebody like you or somebody like Chad or somebody like that has that knowledge is paramount.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we do that with a lot of our owners, because of course we represent people who don't even live in the state of North Dakota. And then we got plenty of people that do live closer. So it allows us to, if they're open to looking at stuff, to walk through a potential property that they're looking to buy and to give them some of that feedback, intel that they don't have to, worry about or they do need to worry about it.
Exactly.
And pass or, whatever the deal is. Mm-hmm. Maybe renegotiate or something.
Most people, how long have you, you've been in property management / the real estate side since probably 2013?
Yep. Yeah, we started Heart River Properties in August of 2013.
Okay, perfect. Most people, and I'm sure, are you co-owner? Do you own it by yourself? How does that work?
Yeah, I do have a boss. Her name's Maria.
Yep.
Happens to be my wife.
There you go.
But yeah, her and
That's
I
a good boss to have sometimes.
Oh yeah. She keeps me on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just her and I. We have our construction company is Heritage Inc. Our property management is Heart River Property, and her and I are the sole owners.
Awesome. How many properties do you guys float that you usually manage?
So we do cover not just Dickinson. We're in Belfield, South Hart, and Killdeer.
Okay.
Currently, and we have it's about 800 doors right now.
Okay.
Between multifamily, single family, and then a little bit of commercial storefront. But it's mainly the residential.
Yeah. And was that the strategy from the get-go, is to kind of stay more residential than commercial?
Well, not necessarily. That's what we got into. It's, I don't know if easier is the right word. Mm-hmm. Probably it's easier to get into the residential side. Yep. That's what I found anyway.
Especially with lending for people too and everything.
Yep. Even more the commercial folks. Not that there's not a lot of local commercial owners. There are, but there's a lot of outside larger corporations that own stuff. So it's harder to find those guys.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that is part of the plan because I don't think you see a lot of really good commercial property managers in town. And I don't say that to knock anybody. It's just, I don't see it. So I see that as an opportunity. Mm-hmm. I have not really got into really expanding that side of things.
Yeah.
But I would like to as we continue. But yeah, I mean, it was just easier to pick up.
That lower, it's a way lower barrier of entry.
Yes.
Just to get into that.
Yep, for sure.
Awesome.
So that's how it started. And it really started, I didn't even know it's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was just kind of getting tired of the remodel stuff.
Uh-huh.
And it was just like, that wears you out because the jobs take longer and they cost more money.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of end up being the bad guy.
Yep. All the time.
And so I was just like, I loved the transformation, taking somebody's kitchen or their home in general, whatever, and transforming it from 1970 to 2000, whatever.
Yeah.
That was the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
The in between was the struggle. So we, through a series of events, we were just like, you know what? Let's see what happens. I talked to one of the property managers at the time in town. He no longer lives here, but I said, "You think there's room for another property manager?" He's like, "Absolutely." So we just started.
Really?
We didn't do just a ton of homework. And that's kind of how I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I just kind of go
Jump
for it,
jump in
with both feet, and like if we're mentioned, you know, talking to your sister, I've had people along the way that were give me very generous with their time and their knowledge when I had questions, when I got in tight spots, and you know, and so that's been huge, and coming along and learning it and being able to expand.
Yeah, I tell people, and I struggled with it, and I still struggle with it to this day. But people analyze everything, whether it's starting a business, whether it's buying a rental property or whatever. We tend as humans to only jump when it's comfortable, but then it's too late. And so what I tell everybody, get enough information that you can just take the leap and then do it. Instead of, usually there's like a 70% rule. Get about 70% of the knowledge that you think you need to have success and then go, because you'll learn the other 30% and you're going to be forced to. I had a conversation. I was a college football player, a power athlete, never did endurance, never did running. I'm built for 40 yards and a sandwich. It's a good 40 yards, but I'm not built for anything like that. My mother was a professional bodybuilder, pro card, everything, but then went total 180 into triathlons, marathons, Ironmans, all that.
Wow.
And I was talking to an individual that runs 50 plus and 100 plus races. And it's crazy. And I was telling him, I was like, the way to really push the level of performance is sign up for the race. You'll get your work done if you have to sign up for that race. If you put money on the line and you have a date, you'll get the work done.
Right.
Same thing with what you were doing, right? That's why I love strength and conditioning. That's why I love working out and physically exerting ourselves, because there's so many parallels, you know?
For sure.
When you started, how was it a lot of just mentors, things like that? How do you start a property management company?
Yeah, so it's not particularly easy.
Yeah.
So even though it was only a year after I had moved here, or we had moved here, it was still a year. And all the contacts that we had made up until that point viewed us as a contractor.
Yeah.
That's what we did. So we built at the time, my brother-in-law was a website builder. So we had him do a website for us, you know, did all the clerical stuff, name, got all that stuff, started at the time it was a DBA, and did all that kind of thing. And then from there, I just started letting my realtor, because at the time I'm not a realtor yet. Mm-hmm. So, but I knew plenty of realtors. And I went to some of them, and I can still see the look on their face today. They're just like, "What? But you're a contractor. Where are you going to get your inventory?" I said, "I don't know.
Yeah,
but I'm going to get it." And they said, "Well, are you going to buy a company?" I was like, "No, I don't have any money to buy a company. I'm just going to do it." Uh-huh. And so I think a lot of those folks were like, "Well, good luck."
Yes. Kind of wrote you off.
Probably not referring anybody to you soon because you're a contractor. Mm-hmm. And so I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember how we got our first property.
Yeah.
That's been long enough ago. And that was 2013. Things were still nuts in the general area and with construction. However, I did start building a relationship with Dave Bauer back then.
Yep.
And so over the years, we've become very good friends, and he's been my biggest mentor in the space.
It's a good mentor to have.
So as I got to know him a little bit, he said, well, I tell you what, I get calls all the time for people wanting me to manage their houses.
And too many, probably.
Yeah, but they're calling from Belfield. They're calling from Beach. I'll refer those people to you. And I said, great, I don't care. So for the first couple of years, I was driving to Mott, Beach, Halliday,
Awesome.
Hebron, and I had nothing in Dickinson.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. So did we make any money? No, heck no. We spent it because I would drive all the way to Beach for tire kickers, but I didn't care because I knew that was my education.
Yep.
Like I told you, I haven't spent any time in a college classroom, but there's a lot of ways to get an education, and I embraced it.
Yeah.
And so as we got some of those, and then we finally got some traction, and we picked up probably a year in, we picked up a 16-unit deal, which
was huge at that time for you.
6 or 7 of them were in Mott, but there was 8 of them in South Hart, and we were on cloud 9.
Yeah.
We were like it took us from 4 units to 20 or whatever it was, around 20. So and then once we got that, people started, once they figured it out, because you don't just advertise who you're working for necessarily, but they ask you how many you have. And so at some point, somewhere around the 50 mark, I think people finally, locally, started taking it serious.
That's cool.
Then just looking at us as a contractor.
Yep.
So anyway, we just went from there, and Dave kept feeding us outside leads, which was great because we were getting our education. And then as more realtors, I built relationship with those guys, and they saw that we were actually doing it. You know, that's one of the other things with anything you do is the longevity and the commitment to consistency, because so many people, when it doesn't work in the first year, maybe it doesn't work in the first 2 years, they're like, it doesn't work.
Yep.
Forget it. But
keep showing up.
I'm also kind of stubborn. I'm told I'm really stubborn.
Yep.
But
that's what happens when your wife's your boss too.
That's right. So, but that helps to say, you know what, man, because I'm also impatient, unfortunately.
I'm bad.
So nothing happens quick enough for me. But when I stop and I reflect and I look back over the last 11 years, I'm like, what am I even talking about?
Yeah.
Why do I get so impatient? God has blessed us immensely, and not just with business, for sure.
With people, with opportunities.
But certainly he has with our companies that we've been, and the people we've been able to work with, the people we've got to know, the whole deal. So we built up to 160 units organically. Wow. And then 2020, everything changed there, because that's when we bought Bauer Property Management. Yep.
So I was wondering. I think I knew that, but I knew he had ended up selling out all his stuff and going from there.
I don't recommend that, by the way. I don't recommend.
It's a hard takeover, dude, and a big takeover.
5 times, overnight you go to 5 times the properties. I mean, it was fun. I look back on it and I'm like.
So you went from about
160 to about 800.
Wow.
It was pretty overwhelming.
I mean, we'll get into the growing pains of that. The interesting thing, up until your 160-ish properties, for most people, they never maybe had aspirations of starting a property management company. They want to get into real estate, and like that lower barrier to entry is either be a landlord or house hack or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Explain a little bit for me selfishly and people listening, because it's you're taking a percentage of revenue and a lot of that kind of thing. Is it right off the bat to get to 10 properties, 5 properties? Is it a really capital intensive right off the bat, or is it just networking and getting that ball rolling?
So capital on our part?
Yes.
So in our case, we had a little bit of a luxury, and I did this as many things as I didn't think through. This was part of the plan. I didn't know how quick it would grow or how slow. Had no idea. I wanted it to grow slow. Yeah. We were so busy by that time with construction, and we were running hard. We were 3-4 months out just on construction. And so I couldn't really afford for it to go quick, or I didn't think I could. So, and it actually worked out really well. So for the first 2 to 3 years, it grew really slow and fairly incrementally. Yeah. Like anything, there were seasons where we'd pick up nothing for 3 months. And then maybe for a month or two, we'd maybe pick up 5 to 10 units. So that part couldn't really have worked out better, but we didn't put a lot of capital into it. The website was our biggest.
I was just going to say, like,
was
the backside
the
stuff.
most money by far. Other than that, it was just networking and letting people know we were still around.
Yeah, and that you weren't just a contractor.
Right. Yeah. And so that's how we did it. And again, since it wasn't our primary form of income, we didn't have to press, I guess,
Exactly.
for lack of a better term.
Well, there's a mindset behind that. When you get desperate, you can fake it for a little while, but it starts to show in your marketing. It starts to show in your day to day. I on a smaller scale, like my real estate, again, similar concept. I don't depend on that to put food on the table. It's what I'm trying to build, our dream, right? But I was starting out as a lowly personal trainer, and I just graduated college, and I was training out of a 25 by 25 square foot gym, 625 square feet. You could fit a treadmill and a squat rack.
Nice.
And we got strong, but I was kind of mentoring under and learning from Dr. Brian Bell. Oh, yeah. Dr. Brian Bell, one of my favorite people in the world, just a happy-go-lucky. He ended up getting cancer, and he's doing actually very well, just sustaining very well. But I was overhearing a conversation with him and his secretary, and at this point, I was in that desperate mode. I was like, I need these clients, I need this, I need that, and I'm pushing. And like you, I'm not I'm very, very impatient, and I think that's a business owner attribute to some extent.
I think so.
So I overheard him having a conversation. He was saying that add her to the wait list, and he said that about 10 different times. And he had this wait list, just 20 pages long. And I told myself, I was like, one day I'll get there. It's not going to be today or tomorrow, but I'll get there. And I never thought that day would come. And 3-4 years ago, that day happened. And it's like, okay, that means we need to hire. We need to start bringing people in and hiring and training and doing all that stuff. But it's something that I never thought would happen. But it organically happened. When you start taking care of people, you start setting a standard in your business and what you do in your life. People start talking, and Dickinson, and you get a whole different aspect and look because you lived in California. But the people in Dickinson are different, and it's such a good community of people. There's great,
amazing.
Dude. Yeah. I've never seen, even in my hometown in Worland, Wyoming. Very small. Everybody knows everybody's business. Everybody knows everybody. But the economy crashed in the mid 2000s, early 2000s. Locally, and drugs set in, and kind of the low. Yeah, it just wasn't great. But you move here, and there's a lot of successful people that want other people's success, and because their success is everybody's success, you know. And so I'm sure you've dealt with that as well. Just the high quality of people here.
For sure. Yeah. And just to go back just real quick on, because you hit the nail on the head on the urgency or the desperate thing. And I don't know who it was. It's not original with me, but I was listening to somebody along the line that was, because I've listened to a lot of sales stuff. I was not born a salesman, but I learned at some point that you either sell or you die. So I had
Andy Elliott's a good one that's just come up recently. He's very
okay.
Haven't
heard of him.
You probably have seen it, but don't know his name.
Yeah. But somewhere along the line, I heard somebody talk about the difference between desperation and urgency. And sometimes we get the two mixed up, and you're 100% right. People see it when you're desperate. Yeah. Urgent, there's no problem there. But desperate is a tough deal. And to be honest with you, when we came up here, I was pretty desperate.
Yeah.
Like we had a little bit of money. We weren't going to starve, but it wasn't going to last very long either. And so, for 2 weeks, I mentioned that, like, I was a little discouraged. I was like, I see all this work going on. I was practically ready to start telling people, let me work for free, just to show you that I'm honest. Because what I found is a lot of contractors that had come in from the outside took 50% deposits and never showed up. Maybe they worked for whatever a little bit and billed for a whole bunch of stuff and then split. So all these people were getting hung out to dry. And so I figured that out pretty quick. And so I was able to go to people and say, one way that we were able to get going just from a financial standpoint is I said, look, you buy the material. So you don't even have to pay me for material. And if it's a long enough job, you don't owe me anything. But until I get to a spot, whenever I bill you, it will only be for work that you can see that I've done.
Interesting.
And if it's a small enough job, don't pay me a dime till I'm done.
Yeah.
So now you can feel good about actually paying for something.
Yep. That's going to get done.
And so just real quick on the desperation thing, one of the first big jobs I got was for Bruce and CB Snyder, who I'm sure you know.
Yep.
They had a couple of spec houses going. Somehow he got my name, don't know how, but he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I need the interior trim work done, decks and stairs." And I was like jumping up and down. Mm-hmm. Well, when we got done, so I was able to do those jobs barely without getting paid for anything till I was done. I got them done quick enough. Mm-hmm. And I went to them and said, done. They understood it's time to, and they said, well, our billing period is every 30 days, which I was very familiar with being in the construction industry.
Yep.
Heck, in California, if we got paid by our contractors 60 or 120 days, we were pretty happy.
Yeah.
But I had to do something that was incredibly uncomfortable for me, and I had to ask them if they could pay me sooner than 30 days.
Yeah.
And it was horrendous for me. And they did.
Yeah.
They said, not a problem. And that was 11 years ago. And
Wow.
and I will never, they will always get high marks for me.
Yeah.
But they were willing to do that. But that was a time where that desperation was.
It was there.
Yeah.
It was there. Yeah. And it's a fine line to ride, and it's hard because maybe you don't see it. I mean, you feel the desperation. You feel it, but you don't see what other people see of you, And it's hard to, I guess, ride that line a little bit. I mean, I did it for many, many years, and it's hard looking back at it, but the urgency of that desperation definitely got us to where we're at. It's a tough road. It's a tough road. So it's interesting. There's a lot of people that get into real estate that do many different things. I had Bryce Kephart. So I ran into him. I don't even know how I ran into him. I think I did some social media stuff for him. I'm big on social media, and so I do a couple different companies in town. I provide them their social media marketing and do all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I was talking to Bryce, and he started out construction and then started flipping, and then does a bunch of different things, And so what does the day-to-day, I know it could vary big, but what's the day-to-day mainly look like for you? Well, twofold question. How many employees do you guys usually run-ish?
So we've got, there's 7 of us. So my wife and I work every day in the business, of course. I've got my brother and my dad are on our maintenance team.
Awesome.
And then we have a full-time leasing agent, Cassidy. We have a front desk gal, Maria. So we have 2 Marias. Mm-hmm. So that's not confusing. And then we have a part-time gal that helps my wife with the back office stuff, Lindell.
Awesome.
And so that's our team. And then, of course, we have lots of third-party vendors.
100%.
So like my day-to-day, man, a lot of different hats all day long. Sometimes I'm out in the field. If there's an apartment that needs turned and there's nobody to do it, I go do it.
Yep.
So that's if that's what's needed, that's what I go do. But I do a lot of the front end stuff too, meeting new owners, going out, looking at houses, potential, to add to the inventory. A lot of networking stuff, between being involved with Rotary and just different stuff. My wife is actually a member of the chamber or on the board there, so we try to plug into chamber stuff as well. So that's a part of my job, overseeing, and I get a lot of the fun stuff.
Yep.
When we got a screaming tenant or even an owner or whatever, I deal with a lot of that's not to say that our staff doesn't. They deal with a lot of tough stuff too. They're champions, but sometimes they got to call me in,
100%.
And we got to try to figure things out sometimes. So, but yeah, all over the place.
Many different hats, yeah.
And then, of course, we have a lot of owners that like to do capital improvement stuff. So I oversee all that stuff, get the bids, help them work through the bids and who we're going to pick to do the work, and then make sure the work gets done. It gets paid. We pay all the bills virtually for all the properties we work on. It varies a little bit.
Yeah.
But we oversee all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is our owner gets a money dumped into their account monthly and they get a report. Other than that, our goal is to take care of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's kind of the standard. That's what you would want, hiring somebody like that. Something you breezed over that I'm sure there was growing pains. There's very good benefits and there's drawbacks and everything. Working with family, how's that dynamic? Because I knew your wife. You said she was. You guys are involved, obviously, in owners, but you have your brother and your father, right?
Yep. Yeah, and actually, I left my mom out. She does billing for me. That used to be on my plate too, which was terrible. I was terrible at it. And
That's my worst.
And it's really hard to get paid if you don't invoice.
Yep.
So when they moved up here, and she ironically enjoys it. So that's worked out really well. So she's part-time as well. But anyway, working with family, yeah, that's a big dynamic. In California, my uncle owned the company, and there was a lot of family that worked together. And some of that was really good. And there was some stuff that was really tough.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of experience. I don't want to say, I'm not patting myself. I'm not saying that like I figured it out.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I worked in it for a lot of years. So, but yeah, it's always a potential landmine.
Yes.
But in our case now, yeah, I mean, my wife and I certainly, she'd tell you the same thing. We have it out sometimes, but it's pretty good. Like we kind of have our lanes.
Yep.
And generally speaking, we stay in those lanes. And then you take my brother who came up here. He's just
Older, younger brother?
He's younger by almost 12 years.
Okay.
So he's just developed into a rock star. I mean, we literally cannot do what we do without him.
Wow.
And he's super loyal, hard worker, has learned a lot and just takes care of stuff.
So he's in the field most of the time doing maintenance for the properties?
So he oversees all the maintenance. He's receiving all the maintenance requests that come online, which pretty much all of them, with rare exception, we're all online. All our stuff is, online. So he takes all that and he's working with our third-party vendors. And then, yes, he's divvying up what he can do and what my dad can do, or, he decides who gets what. And then
that's a big job.
Otherwise he's out in the field a lot, emergencies, between sewer backups and water lines breaking, he's usually the first guy to go figure that one out.
Wow. That's huge. And probably a lot of what, deters people from property management and, tenant relations and actual maintenance and stuff. That's probably what is the hardest growing pain for you. Would you say that was like the sticking point?
Yeah. Again, with my construction background, because I always know that we're the ace in the whole little bit. Obviously, if it's if a furnace breaks in the middle of the night and it's 30 below, we're not HVAC guys.
Mm-hmm.
But what we can do, and this is even before we got larger and had better, had been able to develop really good relationships with our third-party vendors, we always knew we had the ability to fix it to some degree till morning.
Yep.
So if we couldn't get a hold of somebody, and we took heaters, we've stocked heaters or dehumidifiers or air movers, whatever, we can go put a Band-Aid on it.
Yep.
And because we've done that forever, it was no big deal. I mean, it's a big deal to wake up in the middle of the night, but ultimately we knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Where a lot of property managers don't have the knowledge or the background in that world. They're just used to calling somebody. So if they got in a tight spot, it's just like, well, you're going to have to wait till morning. We can put a Band-Aid on it and reduce the risk to the owner and the tenant because we know what to do.
Yeah.
We can't run 24/7 all the time. But if we need to, we can. And that's where that background really comes in handy. So that helped that. But certainly the volume.
Yeah.
Certainly when we took over from Bauer, that just sheer volume of inventory was huge. And even along the way at a much smaller scale, picking up, because I think our biggest, prior to Bauer, I think our biggest pickup at one time was about 28 units.
Okay.
And at the time that was huge.
Well, even the 16 was a huge one. And then,
yeah. And so now our property management is growing. We still are just blowing and going on construction. And so, a 25 unit, 30 unit drop it took a while.
Yeah.
And so we were relying a lot on our owners to have grace with us as we got their units integrated and we got in the swing of things. So I think just the volume from time to time was probably the hardest learning curve, because we know the stuff. We know a lease. We know, we know how to fix things. But when you get a lot,
when your volume increases,
then that's the sticking point.
Yeah. Well, this is a cliche correlation to strength training. Just me being a meathead and everything. I mean, the biggest thing that wrecks people is too much volume. When we are in the gym, and when your weight's high enough and you're doing too much with reps, sets, whatever it is, that's when stuff starts to break down. It's the same parallel as with what you're doing, with what anybody's doing. You spread yourself too thin. Mm-hmm. It's a tough place to be. It's a very tough place to be. I'm interested in like kind of some of the stories or the takeover, but God put you in a situation to be mentored by a very renowned owner, property manager, business owner in Bauer. Mm-hmm. And you got a mentor under him and do some good things. How was that acquisition? How was that takeover? Obviously the volume increased, but was it a slow play thing, or it was kind of the next day it's 800?
Well, both. So yes, we went from December 31st, 2019 to January 1st, 2020, from 160 to 800. Boom. That was the reality. However, let me back up and just say that another thing I don't recommend, unless you're super intentional and highly committed to the relationship, negotiating the purchase of a company with a really good friend.
That's hard, dude.
Is not an easy deal. That's one of the...
And coming out on the back end as...
Still friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that we were committed to that before we ever started the process. But I will tell you, that's one of the hardest things I've ever done, because you've got somebody who's built an incredible company, and it's been their thing, right? And you got somebody else who's coming in who, if you've ever bought a company before, you're usually negotiating with people. I don't want to say you don't care about them, but they're not people you really have a relationship with. Oftentimes, not always, and certainly not with somebody who you're super close to.
Yeah,
we managed to pull that off. That I believe was a really good deal for both parties, and still become friends. Part of that deal was he committed to, I don't remember now exactly, but I think he said the first 3 or 4 months, I'm working with you every day, and you're not paying me. That's just part of the sale.
Wow.
So that wasn't even inked. That was just a verbal.
That's a friend. That's a handshake, man.
Correct. And he did. In fact, he spent probably closer to 6 months every day helping us out. So, of course, Karen Boswell.
Yes, we do know Karen.
Yeah, probably just a little bit. So she had worked for him for 6 years or so. So she came over and worked with us till she came with you guys. So that was huge, having her to know
his system,
his properties, all that stuff. But it was huge for him, just his knowledge with the owners, because not only did I inherit a whole bunch of tenants, I inherited probably another 60 owners, whom I maybe had met one or two, because we did a lot of work for Bauer on the contracting side on his properties. So we did a ton he was incredibly good to us, awarding us a lot of work. That helped us get going. But anyway, so I'd met maybe one or two of them along the way, but certainly not all 60 or 70 of them.
Yeah.
So now I've got like 60 or 70 other personalities to learn too. And you have to learn, what do they want? Some of them just said, you do your thing. If you feel like you need to call me, call me. And others were like, I want to know every single thing.
Yep.
Don't hardly take a breath without giving me a call.
Mm-hmm.
So he was with me for in that first 6 months. I don't even recall.
Yeah.
I mean, it was COVID. We just bought a company. 3 months later, the country shut down, and we were just, it was
mayhem.
It was crazy. It was good, because it was easy to second guess the deal and say, because this was a big deal for us.
And it was such a scary time looking back. We had no idea what the world was going to be.
Yeah,
nothing.
And for the first few months, we were okay. But then it started around August is when we started seeing kind of the exodus as oil really started shutting down. But I refused. I'm human. I won't say that I didn't get concerned. For
Yes.
sure I did. But I fought it hard because, I would tell my wife, she'd be like, what the heck? We just bought this company and now it's like we're losing renters precipitously. At some point it started that way. I said, you know what? I know. I see the numbers too.
Yeah.
But we had peace to buy this company. God knew 2020 and COVID was going to happen. And he gave us whatever that is,
Yeah.
that said, go for it. So I think we're going to be okay, even though we're looking at this stuff and it doesn't look good. So anyway,
That's crazy.
But having Dave work with us was you can't even put a number on that.
No. I mean,
At all.
that's a huge, this is kind of cool for me. I didn't know Dave very well. But the interesting thing, before I even knew Karen, before all this stuff, I rented from him, and admittedly, you'll probably know the property I'm talking about. Admittedly, his worst property ever, that he has told us this. It's behind Rosie's on the south side of town. A lot of football players used to stay there. I can't remember the address. Long story short, I mean, he was talking about condemning it. I mean, he was just going to knock her down and call it a day.
Single family or an apartment?
Single family.
Okay.
Yep, single family. I'll pull up the address when
We got
we're
a couple
here.
of doozies back in there.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And so I had great relations. I mean, you pay your rent. It was dirt cheap. We had 4 guys in there, dirt cheap. It was awesome. It was perfect for the situation that I was in.
Yep.
But then you hear all this other things, and this is why I think it's super important to have 2 sides to every coin. Sure. To get to know people differently. Like at that point, I was a very immature. Football was my life. That was it. I was just laser focused. And I had heard people talk about like, that Dave Bauer guy, like X, Y, and Z. You get turned into the bad guy fast. And that's just the name of the game that we're in, right? And that you're in specifically. It's just the name of the game. We can't make everybody else happy and all these things. But I heard so many bad things about him. And then just getting very small talk relations with him. I'm like, this guy's a human, man. He's built a company from the ground up. Obviously there's good and bad, and we can't make everybody happy. And you're dealing with that volume of people where the negatives seem to sting a little bit more than the positives make us feel better. But it's our perspective, right? Oh, yeah. And the cool thing is like, I get to see this side now. I knew that you guys acquired that, but I didn't understand the relationship behind it, what he did. Like, I hold people very highly that can put a handshake on the table and keep their word, because we don't get that very often anymore. No. I'm in a generation, so I'm in the 30s. Like, I grew up without a cell phone. I'm in that last generation of like the old school kind of thing, and where a handshake means a lot. Yeah. What you do for your family is paramount, and the God that you worship. And, so it's really cool to see that. I didn't know that whole backstory like that. I hold him in very high regards. Yeah. I hold him in very high regards for that.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you right now, because we just got through doing a bunch of lease renewals and some rent raises, and you go on Facebook or social media right now. We're getting hammered. Yes, and we have been for the last 2 weeks on different stuff, and I don't pay a lot of close attention to it. Yeah, my wife she struggles with not tracking it a little bit, but that's fine. But we're getting hammered too. And I had so many people tell me when we bought Bauer, and at this point we'd already been doing it for years. Yeah, but we were still kind of flying under the radar. We were growing, but still not the big name in town and all that kind of thing. And people don't want to do what they say they're going to do. They signed the lease. We didn't make them. Yeah, but they said they would pay. They said they would take care of the place, and they said they'd follow the rules. Like you said. When you were renting, you paid your bills and you took care of the place. There's really no problem. Yep. It's when you start getting off, and that's what we're hired to do, and we're hired to help our owners maximize their investment. Yep. That's what we tell them we're going to do, and so that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So when we raise rents, and they don't see this because you're in the world, but of property investments, the insurance rates are going ridiculous.
Yep.
Like your $1 million plus properties are now, insurance companies are going to 1% to 2% for your deductible. We'll do the math. If you have, some of these folks have multi-million-dollar facilities.
Yep.
That stuff doesn't get paid just magically. And of course, property taxes and just the cost of doing business.
Yep.
The third party vendors.
I was just going to say, in any of the construction
everything is going up, and they don't see that. So really, a big part of our job is educating. A lot of times we have to help educate our owners, because a lot of our owners don't live in the area. They don't even know the local market.
Yep.
And they look at, I remember one of my owners, ironically, an investment group out of the San Francisco area, so not too far from where I grew up.
Yep.
His standard operating procedure was just yelling at me. And he was sitting from his desk in Redwood City and saying, "Oh, oil's back up to $50. Why isn't my..."
And basing everything off of that.
That was it. So a lot of times we're educating those guys, and then even our residents, because it is in our best interest for our residents to stick around. We want to treat them well. We work for the owner first, but a close second is the resident. So if we can cut down on turnover, we're helping you maximize your investment.
Yep.
So education, all day, every day is, and that's what we talk with our staff about, is if you can take that perspective, because it's taxing.
Yes.
Our front desk gal, Maria, man, she's the front. She takes all those initial calls.
Yep.
And you have to employ that perspective that, we got a lease, and that's what dictates everything. So let's look at that and then go from there.
I was just looking up 229 3rd Avenue Southwest is the property. Let me get you a street view here, so I know you'll know it, because I know you know it. Here is she in all of her glory. Man, she looks better on Google Earth than. So at that dead end roundabout, this property right here. I'll show you a street view here too. But
okay. That may not be in our inventory anymore.
I don't know if he got rid of it before you guys took over. Is my guess.
May have. Some properties, obviously they come and go. That one does not look familiar to me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty familiar with all the addresses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I imagine. Even at 800, it's still probably that's a full-time job.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, so we lived there, and it was a football party house. That's all it was. We paid our rent. We did all the things.
That's interesting. Just real quick on the college student thing. We've had different owners, or even other just people that we don't even work for. They're like, "Oh man, I bet renting to those college kids is a nightmare." And some people have had some tough, and not that we haven't, but honestly, we can tell people without restraint that our college kids that we've rented to over the years has been great.
Yep.
They haven't all
Exceptions.
been perfect, but overall, right now we'll rent to college kids any day of the week, and they're human too. There's some that don't do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
But as a general rule, man, especially the football guys, and I think, I don't know, but I think that's a big part of Pete and the crew over there.
It's the culture
and the standard that they have set and really demand.
It's the culture, definitely. Yeah. I got to play under Coach Bijou my first year when he was here, which is an honor. It was an honor. It was an ugly last 3 years, but it was a super good honor, because even now I see him. That man still remembers my name, and he had 42 years of seasons of kids, and he still remembers me by my first and last name. Great guy, man. Pete has demanded a culture that has bred success where we're at right now. It's bred success. And I hold him. I've told this story a couple times on the podcast, but I hold Pete super highly. And this plays into them treating properties right, them having volunteer service throughout the community. There's so much stuff. Yep. And I dealt with opiate addiction for about 10 years of my life. And started off with shoulder surgeries, knee surgeries, that stuff. And it was the Wild West of the pain medication epidemic. Doctors were getting a lot of incentive to give these out.
Sure.
And the research was there, but it was shoved under the rug. Nowadays, it's much harder, and I'm glad. But nonetheless, I dealt with pain medication that went into some of the worst drugs this world has to offer. And long story short, I was living in this property that I was telling you, and I hit rock bottom. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't wreck a car. I didn't do anything like that. But I had two voices talking to me, and those two voices, I always had them. But I've always been a religious person, had a relationship with God my whole life, and I just knew I was destined for a little bit more than what I was doing. And so, long story short, I was playing college football, and I came to the conclusion, like, I need to clean up. I was an all conference linebacker 2 years in a row, and a heroin addict. And one, they don't understand that. Two, they look at me, they're like, really? Like, it's crazy. But I hold Pete so highly because it wasn't my mom that I called first. It wasn't my dad. It wasn't a friend. It was Coach Stan.
Yeah.
That's the culture that he breeds.
Yeah.
And I called him. I came into his office. He sat with me for 3 hours in a hospital room as I was withdrawing off drugs, all this stuff. And he, in his head, he didn't know. He looked at me as the all-conference outside linebacker. I was that person, and I held that. I was a team leader. I was a captain, all these things. And he stayed with me for 3 hours. He talked to all my teachers. He got me into a treatment facility. He got me all these things where I went from 8 to 3 to this treatment facility on campus. It was a really good deal, and went straight to practice. And I was playing that role. And I hold that man very highly. That's the culture he brings. You're not amazing. Another number at all. Like, and you go to Alabama.
Stories like that from other guys. I mean, not your situation, but just
100%.
The character that he has.
Yes. And he recruits those type of people too. And so I can't say good enough things about him. I got to coach with him my last year of football, or after my last year of football, I got to coach with him, good friends with him. I train all of his nephews, his nieces, good friends with Terry and the Stevensons. So it's just a family and a culture that's been built, and I benefited from that. You talk about you move your family here and you knew nobody. I was the same way. I knew nobody when I came here, and then it just became home. But all those relationships with people that God put in your life was all for a reason. And we think that we're the ones pulling those strings, and we can try to believe it. Huh? Yes, it is comical. Even I say it, even every time that I reach out to somebody to have a conversation, as disappointed I was that Chad Glauser wouldn't come on my podcast, he sent me your number for a reason. You know, every person that I have in here, there's something here, you know? So, it's really cool to see. Really cool, man. There was one topic that I wanted to, kind of as we wrap up, there was one topic that I wanted to touch on that just from judging a book by its cover, you are the businessman and investor, you father, husband, all these different hats, but you physically take care of yourself. I can see that. You train in some aspect, I'm guessing. Yeah? Yeah,
so I was the typical, over the years, 18 different or maybe 20, I don't know, gym memberships, and I'd go for a month if I was lucky, and then fizzle out forever. And even when I came up here, got the membership to the community center, went with a buddy here and there. Honestly, the thing I did the most consistent for a long time was playing racquetball with Dave.
There you go.
So we'd go in 2-3 times a week and play for an hour and a half, whatever. And that's really good. But it's not weight training. It's not, it was a little one dimensional from that standpoint. Great time. We loved going in there. It was, from a relationship standpoint, fun, other than getting, being down the back of the arm with a racquetball here and there, which was probably mostly him getting hit by me. But anyway, heck of a racquetball player.
Oh, I've seen him. And before I even knew him, I just saw this guy playing in there. I was like, holy moly.
Yeah. I have not beat him once. We played for 3 years. Didn't beat him once, which is probably a testament to how terrible I am, but that's okay. So, but I knew as our companies grew and I was out in the field less, I was sitting behind my desk more or in my truck. And I was like, this is not, we got married a little later in life, started having kids a little later. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy that can't go out and play catch with my son. So my son is our youngest.
Yep.
But either way, even with our girls, is like, I don't want to be the guy that, because when they hit high school sports, I'm going to be in my 50s.
Yep.
Or at least my son. So I was like, I got to do something. but the community center, great place, right? Bang for your buck, you can't beat.
Yep.
So anyway, I had a cousin that had gotten to CrossFit a long time ago in Ohio. So I kind of watched her peripherally for a long time. And I was like, there's no way she isn't going to last. This is a cult. It's everybody thinks it's cool and it's going to go away. And so will she. And it didn't. She didn't. She's in the medical field. She ended up going to, even before Madison, down to Carson on the medical team. And I was like, man, I think she's pretty serious about this CrossFit thing. But either way, it didn't motivate me to do anything about it. I was just kind of impressed.
Yep.
And you could see on the it was changing her physically. Yeah, and I was like, wow, whatever, still a cult. So anyway, my wife told me one day, she's like, hey, somebody's starting a CrossFit gym in Dickinson. I think I'm going to check it out. I was like, sure, go for it. So she went, and she's like, I think you might like it. And I was like, I don't know. These CrossFit people they're a different,
Yep.
They're like a religion. I don't know what they got going on, but it's weird. Anyway, I knew I needed to. I was like, what? I got nothing to lose because sitting behind my desk and in my truck isn't helping.
Yep.
And I went, and within 2 or 3 days, I was hooked.
Yep.
And so, for lots of reasons, I mean, not the least of which is the community. It's not personal training, obviously, but it's more than going to the community center and trying to figure out your own routine.
Sam and I touched on that. It's a great community.
Yeah, unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, long story short, I got hooked pretty much overnight and became a CrossFit junkie and watched all the videos from 2010 or whatever to current, and I love it. Yep. And got to know so many people. I mean, you talk about expanding your network of people. Just not for any reason than getting to know some really good human beings and a lot of cool people and being able to travel, or not necessarily being able to travel, but when you do travel, drop in somewhere. Yep. And it's just kind of a common mentality. And they don't even know you.
Exactly. It's a real thing. The community of it. So my sister owns a CrossFit gym. My mom owns a gym in Wyoming, and then I own a gym here. So it's
had no choice.
No choice. It was what I was supposed to do, right? And so what I tell everybody, CrossFit, its biggest asset is the community. It's 100%. That's why it's so strong. That's why it's a great thing to do. And early on, I mean, I did CrossFit for a little bit with my sister and did all that stuff. I focus purely on athletics. What I tell people, the beautiful thing about CrossFit is prior to the early 2000s, you had to go to a basement Louis Simmons West Side barbell basement gym to get a barbell training, to get true strength training. And that it opened it to the masses, man. It allowed the soccer mom, the baseball dad, the business owner, the deli worker to get strong and be under a barbell. That's what I love about it. I mean, at the basis, and that's how it kind of started. And now it's like really evolved into the games and like that thing, and it's really expanded. And Sam and I had a conversation about kind of where it started and where it's at now, and it's really evolved. It's really evolved, because it started off as the mom and pop. Oh yeah, yep. And that's kind of how it really got going. I know Terry, and got the opportunity and the privilege of training all of her kids. And it's really cool. I had a revelation. I was talking to Sam about it, but 4 years ago, Terry reached out to me well before she bought the gym. And she reached out to me. She said, Colby, because we had talked, and I know Pete, her brother, and we had talked, and she's like, I love what you do. And I know that where it's at right now, CrossFit is not specific to athletes. It's specific to build a big engine, get strong, expose yourself to a general base of a wide spectrum of modalities. And she texted me, and I was so weirded out. Maybe I was just paranoid or whatever, but she texted me. She's like, I think I want to get Nate in with you. And I was like, what is going on here? You are completely capable. You're capable of doing this. Maybe it's not the true sports performance that I do, but you're completely capable. I was like, she trying to like see how I do things or what's going on here? Come to find out, man, she just really understood that CrossFit wasn't the best thing for him. A true a strength program, just looking at his personal needs and being one-on-one was exactly what Nate needed.
Sure.
And it was super cool because I'm super gracious that like she set aside all of her bias. She set aside everything. It's like, this is what's best for my kid. It was really cool. And then it started with Allie, and then we just went down the way. So
no, I think it's awesome. I mean, people, obviously I'm biased mainly because it's what got me into consistency.
yeah,
I enjoy it enough to get up at 4 a.m. and do it consistently. And by the way, it's pretty important for me to do it for my job because it's where I get the let out, and safely, hopefully. But so that I got lots of reasons for doing it, but I think it's great, the gyms that we have around town, because everybody is everybody
their niche.
Is everybody going to do CrossFit? No, of course not. Is everybody going to do the pit? No. Is everybody going to do Iron Chapel?
Nope.
It's great. There's so many different people that have different needs or different desires, whatever the deal is. So I think it's awesome.
Yep.
It would be, I don't think it would be good at all if there was only a CrossFit gym in town.
Exactly.
As much as
it doesn't fit everybody's needs at all, like my mom does more like 50 plus boot camp kind of things with hers, and she's super busy, and she does it out of a 4-car garage at her house, a big unit. She does that. My sister, CrossFit gym in Buffalo, Wyoming. So if you ever traveling through, it's called Bighorn Fit. So she does that. She does a really good job. Besides the business, being a parent, being a husband, I've started this new journey of trying to become the fittest dad on earth. That's my goal, and I'm serious about it. I'm getting ready for a marathon in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I deadlifted 750 pounds yesterday. So I'm trying to get this spectrum.
I got a ways to go.
I'm trying to get this spectrum, but how has being physically the best version of yourself really played a role in being the best father and the best husband and the best business owner?
Whew. That's a heavy question. But it has. Getting active myself, without question, has helped virtually every aspect of I look at, it seems, and I don't want to put too many people in a box, it seems a lot of people say, well, I'm good at fitness. Or some people say, well, I'm really strong spiritually, but maybe I'm not good at fitness because I'm 300 pounds overweight and whatever. Or maybe somebody says, well, I'm really emotionally and mentally strong. To me, what my wife and I talk about all the time with our kids, as well as among us, is I view it as a circle. And you got to look at all of them. We don't get away with saying, oh, just because whatever, I can't deadlift 750 pounds, but whatever, my 455, that doesn't count if I'm not actively and intentionally growing spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and all those things work together. I can go on about that probably way too long, but so the physical, for sure, that was a missing piece. I'm not saying I've got everything else figured out. Not saying that at all, but the physical part was definitely a missing piece 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Because it's been almost 6 years since I started going to Amicus, but it all works together, and for sure for me, and I know every industry has its tough stuff, right? Of course. But all I can really speak is my industry, because that's what I know. And any given day we can get beat up pretty good. And if I take all that beat up stuff home, and it is incredibly hard for me to drop it at the front door or whatever, leave it in my truck before I get out. But having an outlet like working out helps hugely.
Yeah.
Just to burn off that steam and helps me even if I'm doing it in the morning, which I do half the time is early in the morning, but it sets me up so much better for my day, and to be hopefully, and I think it does. I'm not, any given day I drop the ball, right, when it comes to my kids and all that, and not leaving it at work. But it absolutely is a positive effect on that for being a better husband, better dad, better community guy, and not being able to keep all those things in a little better perspective and not allow the drag of some of what we deal with to affect the rest of my life.
Yeah. And your kids see that. What did you say the ages were?
So Sydney is, she'll be 12 in about 4 days.
Okay.
And then we got a 9-year-old and 7.
Awesome. That's a good split. They see that. They see dad going to the gym at 4 or 5 in the morning. My kid's 9 months old, and I've tried to set that standard. I talk about that on my online training platform that I use, setting your standard. And we talk about it. We had 4 pillars: fitness, family, faith, and finance. Setting that, it's a big thing. So I had it in a pillar form. You had it in a circle form, and it's the same thing, man. It's they see that, and they again, it's what they're exposed to, and they really emulate after that. The strong, masculine father figure that runs the business, does all these things, and after a while, it all pays off, and they really do see it. And I have a saying on my on my online platform with people, like, your kids are going to look up to somebody.
Oh yeah.
Might as well make it you. They might as well make it you, because they will always look up to somebody. And so how can we be their superhero? Yeah. And I'm only on the early side of having kids, and just starting to talk and just getting crazy and running around the house, or crawling around the house. But he sees that, and it's really cool to how that physical outlet, like when I went through my addiction, the only thing that was constant in my life was training. It's always been a constant in my life. As you said, I had no choice. It was my dad played professional baseball. My mom was a bodybuilder, and it was just Colby. Yeah. So it's always been a constant, and I hope to set that for him, and all the future kids like you have with yours.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about nobody's perfect, but if I do believe, I agree with you. If we're intentional about it, and in any given day, we're going to drop the ball, and that's part of it too. Is being willing to admit that to my kids that I dropped the ball in whatever it was, and apologizing, asking for forgiveness, those kind of things. But at the end of the day, you hope that they can see through the imperfections and the failures and see what we are attempting to do intentionally.
Yep.
On all those things. And I'm glad you mentioned the finances, because that's part of in my mind the circle thing, because that one gets left alone.
Yep. And it's such a sticking point in relationships and families.
That's huge to be intentional about your finances, along with those other things. So,
yep. Last question I have. So you, what was it? I had it on the tip of my tongue. Shoot. Anyways, I'll remember it. But so. What were we talking about? The fitness. It's a big question. Being intentional about your finances, your kids. Dang it, it's gone. But that sucks. I usually wrap up the podcast with one question, and that question is, when you're gone, when it's all said and done, when Heart River Properties goes to somebody else, but when you're gone, what are the main things or thing that you want, that Chad wants to be remembered as?
Well, that's a tough one to get. I'm not concise by nature, so I'm always working on being concise.
That's why I run a podcast.
So, I think the overwhelming thing is integrity. Is that, whether it's an owner that we've represented, whether it's been a customer that we did a remodel for or changed their windows, I don't know, whatever it is, or somebody that we know in the community or at church or wherever it's at, that my integrity, they never had to doubt if I was being honest, or if I was holding the relationship up as more important than some sort of personal desire or whatever, something like that. That would be terrible. Of course, if you've, passed away, you wouldn't know, but it would be terrible if people were like, that guy was a cheat and never knew if he was telling the truth or not. So I don't want there to ever be any doubt.
Yep.
That if you're dealing with me at whatever level, I don't care, business or social or personal, that honesty integrity, everything that entails integrity was first and foremost. And especially that over money.
Yes.
We're all working hard, of course, to make money and to whatever it is. Everybody has different goals, better lives of our kids or our own lives or help other people, whatever it is. But I never want money to play a greater role than the relationship.
Yep.
And of course, integrity is
Part of that. Yeah.
a huge part of that.
Yeah.
So I don't, that's not very
Oh,
concise.
that's great. That's great. Trust, integrity, loyalty. I usually say that, like, mine changes. It doesn't change, but it gives different forms every time I ask this question. But it comes down to, did I love people?
Yeah.
I take care of people, which is integrity, which is trust, which is all those things. And it's, were you living a godly life? Were you living a life that God would want you to live? That's, David Goggins. You've probably heard of David Goggins. Have you ever heard of him?
Sounds familiar.
Navy SEAL, ex-Navy SEAL,
okay.
does a lot of motivational stuff.
Yeah.
But he talks about this this moment when we get in. This is a dramatization, but it was a good way to put it. And you get to the gates of heaven, and you're talking to God, and you're having a conversation, and you're doing these things. And he has this list, and it's a list, but it looks like a photo book. And it's a photo book of you and doing all these things, and this list of things that you did. And God opens it up, and you're scrolling through it, and you don't recognize almost any of it. And God, you're having this conversation with him, and God said, this is what you were supposed to do. This is what you were designed for. This is the good, the positive impact, the things that we had designed for you, but we took this path in a different way somehow, And so, like, that haunts me. Like, it really, in a good way, it haunts me. Like, what am I destined to? Yes. What am I destined for? And what's that photo book going to look like? So
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's any question, regardless of how motivated or intentional somebody is, we can always absolutely do better, and not just, right, as believers, not just because we think we can, but because God can work through us. And so yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that unfortunately haven't had maybe good parents or good grandparents or people that built them up and lifted them up and said, yeah, you can do more. And we got a lot of people out there that are hurting. And we can bring them good news on a lot of levels.
Yep. The one constant in my morning prayer, I got like a 4.5 minute drive, and who's counting?
Yeah.
But from my house to here. And the constant, there's a couple different constants in it, but the constant is, bring me the people that you need. Bring me those people in my life so I can expose you to them. Like that's the end goal, And so, like, true evangelization, like true evangelization is not saying, hey, come to get over here, come to church with me. It's starts off with like, hey, we're having a family barbecue, and hey, have you ever just come over and get to know people and get at the roots? That's true evangelization.
Meet people where they're at.
Yes.
Yeah. For too long, or however you want to describe it, it's like clean up and then come to church or wherever. That's not the deal. Got to meet people where they're at, and sometimes that's tough.
It is,
right? Everybody's different, and there's lots of different personalities and all that. But I agree with you. Yeah. There is. I don't think there's anything that trumps having somebody to your home from you.
Yeah.
In terms of building a relationship.
Yeah. 100%, man.
Pretty tough.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This went even better than expected. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man with the many hats. I appreciate your time more than you know. So if people were going to try to reach you, if they wanted to reach out for your services, just see what you do. Talk to Chad. Where would they find you?
Yeah, well, just real quick, really appreciate you reaching out to me. Like I told you,
just on a whim.
First time that I've been on a podcast, and a little intimidating, but you've made it very comfortable. Really appreciate it, and certainly appreciate what you're doing. I know, again, Karen speaks really highly of working with you guys when I have the opportunity to touch base with her. So I think that's great. Really, really proud of what you guys got going on, and that she has been able to join you.
Yeah,
'Cause I know
she's a rock star.
Having a good time. So that's great. As far as Heart River Properties go, you can find us at heartriverproperties.com. Whether you're an owner or a resident, we've got tabs there for both. As far as reaching out to us by phone, we're open 5 days a week. And
Awesome.
Phone number is 701-483-1154. And you'll get some happy voices to answer that phone for you. And we hang out in Dickinson. We live and breathe Dickinson and love it.
Yeah.
And back to the very beginning of what you said, man, Dickinson has just welcomed us. It was mind blowing when we showed up here. And I know I'm probably getting off on a tangent here, but I definitely wanted to put this in there because it is such a big deal coming from California. Knowing people are going to assume I was some liberal commie.
Yes.
And people still hired us and reached out to us. So many people here have treated us like family. And still do to this day, even though it's a transient place. And we've had a lot of our initial friends don't live here anymore.
Yeah.
But there's always been more people to me, and I only hope that we're a little bit of that for them.
Yes, sir.
But Dickinson's amazing, and again, really appreciate you, man.
The best way to put it, it's different.
Yep.
It's a good different,
Yep.
So, ladies and gents, that is it. Folks, if you guys want to reach out, get a hold of him. I hope you guys enjoyed this one and can take some really good nuggets out of this. And if that's starting a property management company is very hard and you got to do some door knocking, well, that's what you got. So I appreciate your time. I know it's finite, and I appreciate everything that you do. And I'm glad we got to have this podcast together, man.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Me as well.
Yep, that is it. We will see you guys next week, and that's number 112. Have a good one.